Do you know what happened when you move heaven and earth? I was what happened. When my father fell in love with my mother, Anne Boleyn, he divorced his queen, Catherine of Aragon, broke up with Rome, and changed all Catholic churches to Churches of England. All that to welcome his coming son, the product and testament of his everlasting love, to Anne Boleyn. Although my father was not happy to have a daughter, he was at least assured that my mother could produce a healthy child. He gave me everything anyone could have wished for. That was, until my mother got on his bad side and was sent to the Tower of London.
Although I was very disappointed when Elizabeth was born, I loved my beautiful little girl. I took away Mary's title of princess and gave it to her. I disbanded Mary's servants and gave Elizabeth the honor and privileges of a princess from the day she was born. I was the best father in the world.
When my father decided to remove my mother by cutting off her head, I dropped from being the royal princess to an illegitimate daughter with a questionable birth. You see, he could have killed my mother for treason or murder, but he convicted her for having affairs with 5 men, one of whom was her brother, George Boleyn. Could you imagine how horrible that must have been? My father had no concern about me, nor my future.
The Anne I fell in love with disappeared. She thought she could do anything as the queen. Stupid woman. I gave her everything, so I could also take away everything. She fought for everything, and she dared to fight me for having other women. She flirted with other men and made me the joke of the town. I had no choice.
So I dropped from heaven and fell to earth and became Lady Elizabeth when my father yanked away my princess title. The marriage proposals that flooded my doorstep stopped, unlike my half-sister Mary, who had a noble princess mother, as well as a powerful grandparents. My mother was a disgraced queen, accused of sleeping with every man she could get her hands on, including her own brother. Despite losing both of my father's love and my mother, I had a great education. My tutor Chambernoun taught me French, Flemish, Italian, and Spanish. William Grindal then taught me English, Latin, Italian, and Greek. My interest in language continued throughout my life. I was also able to speak fluent Welsh, Cornish, Scottish, and Irish. I was probably the best educated woman in the 16th century of England. Maybe that was why I liked my stepmother, Catherine Parr, so much. She was very well educated and even published 2 popular books. She was nice to me, as well as Mary and Edward. As my father's health declined, she put Mary and I back on the succession list. Of course, we were still illegitimate children. Actually, I became an orphan at the age of 3, not only because I lost my mother, but because I lost my father's love as well.
I had accomplished many things in life. The secret was to move on and focus on what's important instead of worrying about what was in the past. Elizabeth, you were in the past. I didn't conveniently forget about you. I just had more important things to do.
Once in a while, like every several years, my father dropped by to see me. I longed for his love so much. I focused on my education so that he could be proud of me. I turned out to be beautiful as my fallen mother.
Elizabeth looked just like Anne. It was painful to look at her. All the memories, good and bad, with Anne flooded back to my mind. She was the silent accuser, pointing her finger at me as her mother's killer. I didn't want to, nor need to, explain how her mother betrayed me. But loving her was difficult, and I just couldn't do it.
Under the urge of my last stepmother, Catherine Parr, my father reconciled with Mary and I. I was so happy. But he soon died in 1547. My brother Edward was only 9 years old. I was devastated by the loss of my father. I had so many dreams of being with him. However, those dreams were shattered. Queen Dowager Catherine soon married the most eligible bachelor in England, Lord Thomas Seymour, King Edward's uncle. Edward, Mary, and the council were furious at her hasty marriage without their approval. I didn't blame her. I knew how it felt to be lonely. Queen Catherine was kind enough to invite me to live with her. She offered to pay for my education and invited my cousin Jane Grey to join us. I was thrilled, as my best memories were with her and my father. But when I arrived, I saw the kind, handsome, intelligent, and charming Lord Admiral Thomas. He was nice, sweet, and talked to me like the father I never had. He was like a father figure that appeared in the shining armor of a handsome knight. He complimented me on how beautiful I was every day. My heart beat like a deer when he was near me. From the way he looked at me, I knew he felt the same way. Queen Catherine was pregnant and had little time for me, but Thomas spent a lot of time talking and playing with me. He felt the void left behind by my father and filled the hole in my heart. Catherine became furious and sent me away when she found us embracing each other. Catherine could separate us physically, but she couldn't separate the love in our hearts. When Catherine died in September 1548, Thomas told me that he wanted to marry me. I told him that my answer would be yes, if he could get council approval. And he tried. However, when they learned about that, he was arrested for plotting to marry me and his attempt to overthrow his brother, the Lord Protector. I don't know why it was wrong for him to propose to me. He was widowed, and I was single. He was of high status and respected. If he could marry the Queen Dowager, why could he marry the illegitimate daughter of King Henry? My brother Edward was furious when he learned about prior liaison. He asked Sir Robert Tyrrell to interrogate me. Although I admitted nothing, he put on record, I do see it in her face that she is guilty. For that, poor Thomas was beheaded on March 20th, 1549. People don't know how kind I actually was. I should have killed Robert Tyrrell for causing Thomas's death, but I left him alone until his death in 1572. Although I liked Edward more than I liked Mary, Edward eliminated me from the succession, while Mary did not. Mary arrested me and almost had me killed for no good reasons, while Edward did not. Gosh, what kind of a family did I have? My father killed my mother, my sister put me in jail, and my brother cut me off from my inheritance. In November of 1558, when my sister, the Bloody Mary, died, I was the only choice left for the English throne, unless you wished to give the crown to Queen Mary of Scots, who was a Catholic married to the future King of France. Giving the crown to her would have been like giving England to France, and ceded defeat to Scotland. Plus, they wanted their 25-year-old queen to produce a healthy male heir for their Tudor dynasty. However, they did not know that I had already gave my heart to Robert Dudley when we were both imprisoned in the Tower of London. Robert was tall, handsome, intelligent, charming, and loving. He was perfect in every way. But he was from a treasonous family, and he already had a wife. But at that time, who cared? We both might have been dead by the time the next death warrant arrived. But fate put me in the throne, and put Robert in my palm. I rejected marriage proposals from kings and emperors because I had to stay true to my heart. For a short while, I thought my dream was coming true. As Robert's wife, Amy, mysteriously fell down the stairs and died. But Robert soon became the prime suspect. Although there was no evidence of him being guilty, the cloud that hovered over our hearts and our heads made any hope for marriage impossible. Robert was always by my side. He was my man, and served me whenever I needed him. However, he wanted a son more than he wanted the girl with the crown, so he secretly married Lettice Knollys in 1578. By that time, I was 45 years old and had no chance of producing an heir. My long line of suitors were gone years ago, but then the Duke of Anjou, the handsome French prince, heir apparent to the French throne, proposed to me. The young Duke fell in love with me quickly when we met. His love proved that I was still charming. He loved me even though he was 23 years younger than me, even though he was the heir to the French throne, and marrying me would mean he would not have any children. But love is blind, and I was willing to give my hand to him. The discussion fell apart when his brother, Henry III, in 1581, wanted us to marry before we finalized the Anglo-French alliance. I said no, as I must marry on my own terms. The Duke was so upset, he refused to leave England and openly declared that he would kidnap me and make me his bride. Of course, that did not happen. He left England with a broken heart and died in 1584 when he was only 29 years old. I was a good queen. England thrived under my 44-year reign. I had major military victories that made England the strongest country in Europe. Despite cutting off my cousin, Queen Mary of Scots' head, I left the English crown to her son, King James. Many things had changed over the years, but I was still the girl, lonely and longing for love that she never had up until I died in 1603. A woman who could have everything, but ended up with nothing. No husband, no children, no love.